A millionaire opened her door on Christmas morning and found dirty, starving twins, but when she discovered who they were, she began to cry. The silence was deafening in the impressive Anderson mansion. Beth Anderson, the lonely millionaire, walked barefoot through the marble corridors, her steps echoing in the emptiness of the house. It was Christmas morning, but for Beth, it was just another day. The 5-meter-tall Christmas tree dominated the main hall, its lights blinking aimlessly for a non-existent audience. Expensive ornaments and golden garlands adorned every corner, a demonstration of opulence that only served to accentuate the solitude of the environment. Beth ran her hand along the stair railing, her fingers encountering a thin layer of dust. Not even the staff were present on this festive day. Stopping in front of one of the enormous windows overlooking the snow-covered garden, Beth watched families passing by on the street, laden with gifts and smiles. Children played in the snow, their laughter muffled by the thick glass of the window. For a moment, Beth felt a pang in her chest, a mixture of envy and regret she quickly tried to stifle. Turning around, her eyes fell on a framed photograph on a side table. In it, a younger Beth smiled, surrounded by faces that now seemed unfamiliar. Friends, colleagues. Their names escaped her memory like sand through her fingers. How many Christmases had passed since she'd shared a festive meal with someone who genuinely cared? Beth walked to her office, a cold and impersonal room dominated by a massive mahogany desk. Trophies and plaques of recognition covered the walls, silent witnesses to her professional success. She picked up one of the awards, reading the inscription without truly absorbing the words. What did all these achievements mean now? Returning to the hall, Beth turned on the state-of-the-art sound system. The gentle notes of White Christmas filled the air, a pathetic attempt to inject some holiday spirit into the atmosphere. But the music only seemed to accentuate the mansion's emptiness. Sitting on the Italian leather sofa, Beth picked up her tablet, scrolling distractedly through work emails. Even on Christmas, business didn't stop. She had meetings scheduled for the next day, contracts to review, important decisions to make. The Anderson empire hadn't built itself after all. But for the first time in years, Beth hesitated before diving into work. Her eyes wandered around the room, taking in the surreal scene of a house perfectly decorated for Christmas, yet completely devoid of the warmth and joy of the occasion. An old photo album on the shelf caught her attention. Beth picked it up, her hands trembling slightly as she opened it. Photos of past Christmases leapt from the pages, her as a child, tearing open wrapping paper with enthusiasm, as a teenager, surrounded by friends at a party, as a young adult, toasting with college classmates. When, exactly, had she lost that light in her eyes? One photo in particular made her pause. In it, Beth hugged a dark-haired young woman, both smiling broadly at the camera. Sarah. The name came as a whisper from a long-buried past. Her best friend, confidant, almost like a sister. What had happened to Sarah? Beth could barely remember the last time they spoke. The weight of years of neglecting her personal relationships fell upon Beth like an avalanche. She had traded friendships for contracts, love for profit, family for a fortune that now seemed empty and meaningless. Unexpected tears began to form in the corners of her eyes. Beth wiped them away quickly, as if ashamed of her own vulnerability. She stood up abruptly, determined to shake off this moment of weakness. Walking to the state-of-the-art kitchen, Beth prepared a cup of gourmet coffee. The rich aroma filled the air, but something was missing. The smell of freshly baked cookies, the murmur of cheerful voices, the feeling of belonging. Back in the hall, Beth stopped in front of the Christmas tree. There were no gifts beneath it. Whom would she give them to, after all? Her reflection in the nearby mirror startled her. A middle-aged woman, elegant but with empty eyes, alone in a house far too large. It was then that a realization hit her like a train. She had everything and nothing at the same time. Years devoted exclusively to work had given her a fortune, but at what cost? The mansion's walls seemed to close in around her, the deafening silence mocking her hollow achievements. Beth sat down again, this time allowing the tears to flow freely. Years of repressed emotions finally found an outlet. Between sobs, she wondered, was it too late to change, to reconnect, to find a purpose beyond profits and acquisitions. The sound of the doorbell cut through the air like a thunderclap, making Beth jump. Who could it be on Christmas morning? The staff dismissed, no family, friends long forgotten. Hesitant, she got up, wiping her tears and straightening her posture. As she approached the door, a mix of apprehension and curiosity took hold of her. For a brief moment, Beth felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the thrill of the unexpected. With her hand on the doorknob, she took a deep breath. Whoever was on the other side of that door, one thing was certain: this Christmas would be different from all the others. And maybe, just maybe, it would be the start of a long overdue change in Beth Anderson's life. The door opened, and with it, a new chapter in Beth's life was about to begin. Beth opened the door, the biting winter cold rushing into the foyer. Her eyes, still red from her recent tears, widened at the sight before her. Two small boys, no older than 6, stood on the doorstep. They were dirty, shivering with cold, their clothes torn, their expressions fearful. For a moment, Beth stood paralyzed. The boys were identical, twins without a doubt. Dark, disheveled hair, bright blue eyes filled with fear and hunger. Their cheeks were flushed from the cold, noses red and sniffing. One held the other's hand tightly, as if their lives depended on it. "Please," stammered the boy on the left, his voice trembling as much as his small body. "Can we come in? It's cold." Beth blinked, emerging from her stupor. 1,000 questions raced through her mind in an instant. Who were these children? Where had they come from? Where were their parents? Why were they alone on Christmas morning? Beth began, hesitant. Part of her, hardened by years of ruthless business deals, wanted to close the door, call the police, let someone else handle this. But another part, a part she thought she had buried long ago, twisted at the sight of these helpless children. The other boy stepped forward, gently tugging at the sleeve of Beth's coat. "Please, ma'am, we're hungry." Those simple words broke something inside Beth. Without a second thought, she opened the door wider. "Come in, quickly. Let's get you out of this cold." The boys entered hesitantly, their eyes wide as they took in the mansion's luxurious interior. Beth closed the door, silence reigning once more, now punctuated only by the occasional sniffle from the children. "My name is Beth," she introduced herself, trying to keep her voice calm. "What are your names?" "I'm Jack," said the boy who had spoken first. "And this is my brother Henry." Henry waved timidly, still clinging to his brother's hand. Beth knelt to get on the children's eye level. Up close, she could see the dirt smudges on their faces, their chapped lips from the cold, the dark circles under their eyes suggesting they hadn't slept well in days. Her heart tightened. "Jack, Henry," she said softly, "you're safe here. We'll take care of you, okay? First, how about a warm bath and some clean clothes?" The boys looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Jack nodded. "Yes, please." Beth guided them to the nearest guest bathroom, a room larger than many apartments. She turned on the taps of the luxurious tub, adjusting the temperature. Can you wash yourselves, or do you need help?" "We can manage," Henry spoke for the first time, his voice barely above a whisper. Beth nodded, placing fluffy towels and robes within their reach. "I'll go find some clothes. I'll be right back, okay?" Leaving the bathroom, Beth hurried to the attic. She knew she had stored some boxes of old clothes that once belonged to her nephew, who was now in college. Rummaging frantically, she found pieces that seemed the right size. Returning to the bathroom, she knocked softly on the door. "Boys, I brought some clothes. I'll leave them right out here, okay?" A muffled "thank you" came from inside. Beth went down to the kitchen, her brain working a mile a minute. What should she feed hungry children? Her refrigerator, usually stocked only with gourmet pre-made meals and exotic ingredients, seemed inadequate. Finally, she opted for something simple: tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. While she prepared the food, Beth couldn't help but notice how the previously cold and impersonal kitchen seemed to come alive. The aroma of soup and melting cheese filled the air, bringing a sense of home. Minutes later, The twins appeared at the kitchen door, clean and dressed in warm clothes. They looked like completely different children. Their dark hair, now clean, fell in curls on their foreheads. Their blue eyes, once dulled by fear, now shone with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Come on, sit down." Beth guided them to the kitchen island, placing steaming plates in front of them. "Eat slowly, okay? I don't want you to get sick." The boys needed no further encouragement. They attacked the food as if they hadn't eaten in days, which, Beth realized with a pang, was probably true. While the children ate, Beth watched them, 1,000 questions in her mind. Where had they come from? Why were they alone? Shouldn't they be in some orphanage? Were they running from someone? "It's good," Jack mumbled between bites. "Thank you, Miss Beth." "You're welcome, sweetheart," Beth responded automatically, surprised by how easily a term of endearment slipped from her lips. When the plates were empty, the twins seemed more relaxed, the warmth and the food clearly having an effect. "Now," Beth began softly, "can you tell me where you came from? Where are your parents?" The boys exchanged looks again, that silent communication unique to twins. "Our mum," Henry began, his voice low. "She's been sleeping for a long time." Beth frowned, confused. "Sleeping? Do you mean in the hospital?" Jack completed. "They said she won't wake up." Beth's heart sank. A coma. "These poor children. And your dad?" she asked gently. Jack shook his head. "We don't know our father. Mum never talked about him." Beth took a deep breath, trying to process everything. 2 children, alone in the world, with no one to care for them. And for some reason, fate had brought them to her door. "Well," she said finally, "you can stay here for now. We'll figure it out together, okay?" The boys nodded, eyes wide with gratitude and relief. In that moment, looking at those tired yet hopeful faces, Beth felt something awaken inside her, a need to protect, to care. The emptiness she'd felt earlier seemed to fill with something new, something frightening yet incredibly comforting. The mansion, which a few hours ago seemed cold and lifeless, now hummed with a different energy. The smell of homemade food, the soft sound of the children's voices, the sensation of having a purpose beyond herself. Beth didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. Her life would never be the same, and maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what she needed. The afternoon sun filtered through the Anderson mansion's windows, casting dancing shadows across the marble floor. The oppressive silence that once dominated the place had been replaced by something new, the sound of childish laughter. Beth watched, fascinated, as Jack and Henry explored the vast main hall. The twins, now clean and well-fed, seemed to have found a new energy. They ran from one side to the other, their eyes gleaming with excitement at each new discovery. "Look, Jack," Henry exclaimed, pointing to an enormous globe in the corner of the room. "It's the whole world." Jack ran to his brother, and together they spun the globe, laughing as they tried to stop it with their tiny fingers. Beth couldn't help but smile. It was as if the mansion, long dormant, was finally waking up. The children's laughter echoed through the corridors, bringing life to every corner. As she observed, Beth couldn't help noticing certain features in the boys, the shape of their eyes, the way they furrowed their brows when focused, even the timbre of their laughter. It all sparked a strange sense of familiarity. "Miss Beth," Jack called, pulling her out of her thoughts. "Can we see the rest of the house?" Beth hesitated for a moment. The mansion was huge, filled with valuable and potentially dangerous objects for curious children. But seeing the hopeful look in the twins' eyes, she relented. "Of course," she replied, extending her hands to them. "But stay close to me, okay?" The boys nodded enthusiastically, each taking one of her hands. The simple, innocent contact sent a wave of warmth through Beth's body. How long had it been since someone held her hand like that, with so much trust and affection? They walked through the corridors, the twins asking endless questions about every painting, every sculpture, every antique piece of furniture. Beth surprised herself with her own patience, answering each question with a tenderness she didn't know she possessed. As they passed her office, Beth noticed something strange. The door, which she always kept closed, was ajar. Frowning slightly, she guided the children inside. The room looked as she had left it, with one exception, A small, worn backpack lay in the middle of the Persian rug. Beth froze. How had she not noticed it before? "Our backpack!" Henry exclaimed, running to pick it up. Beth watched curiosity and apprehension swirling in her chest as the boys knelt around the backpack. Jack opened it carefully, as if handling a precious treasure. From inside, they pulled a few items: an extra set of very worn clothes, a small photo album, and a yellowed envelope addressed simply to Beth. Beth's heart leapt, her name there, on that mysterious envelope. She took a step forward, hand instinctively outstretched. Jack, noticing the movement, quickly put the envelope back in the backpack. "Sorry, Miss Beth," he said, his voice suddenly serious. "Mom said we could only give this if—" He stopped, exchanging a significant glance with Henry. Beth felt a knot form in her throat. What was going on here? Who was their mother? And why did she have a letter addressed to her? Before she could ask any questions, Henry abruptly changed the subject. "Miss Beth, can we play outside? There's snow." The sudden shift caught Beth off guard. Part of her wanted to insist, to learn more about the mysterious envelope. But another part, the part that was rapidly falling in love with these boys, didn't want to pressure them. Sure," she replied, forcing a smile. "Let's find some warm coats for you." As she helped the twins bundle up, Beth couldn't get the envelope out of her mind. Who had written it? What did it say? And why were the children so reluctant to give it to her? Outside, the snow covered the mansion's vast garden like a white, immaculate blanket. Jack and Henry ran into the middle of the lawn, shouting with joy as they sank into the fluffy snow up to their knees. Beth watched from the porch, wrapped in her own coat. There was something magical about the scene, two carefree children playing in the snow, their laughter echoing in the cold winter air. For a moment, all worries about mysterious envelopes and unknown origins dissipated. The boys started rolling snowballs, trying to build a snowman. Beth hesitated for a moment before stepping down the porch steps to join them. "Let me help," she offered, surprising herself. Together, the three worked in the snow, molding it, stacking it. Beth couldn't remember the last time she had done something so simple and fun. Her hands, usually occupied with important documents and electronic devices, were now cold and damp from the snow, and she loved the feeling. As they worked, Beth couldn't help noticing more similarities between the twins and someone. The way Jack scrunched his nose when concentrating, the way Henry tilted his head when thinking. These were such familiar gestures, but she couldn't pinpoint from where. When the snowman was finally complete, decorated with an old hat and a scarf Beth had found, the three stepped back to admire their work. "It's the best snowman in the world," Henry declared, his eyes shining with pride. "It sure is," Beth agreed, surprised by the warmth in her own voice. As they headed back inside, the children exhausted but happy, Beth felt a wave of emotional conflict. On one hand, there was the unexpected joy of spending the afternoon playing in the snow, doing something so simple yet so meaningful. On the other, there was the mystery of the envelope, the unanswered questions about the children's origins, and the strange feeling of familiarity that wouldn't leave her. In the kitchen, as she prepared hot chocolate for the boys, Beth made a decision. For now, she wouldn't push. She would let things flow naturally. After all, it was Christmas, a time of miracles and second chances. And who knew? Maybe this was the beginning of something wonderful. Watching Jack and Henry blow on their hot chocolates, their cheeks still rosy from the cold, Beth felt a wave of protectiveness and affection she hadn't experienced in years. Whatever mystery lay behind these boys, one thing was certain. They had brought something back into her life that she hadn't even known was missing. And as night fell over the Anderson mansion, now filled with laughter and warmth, Beth wondered what else fate had in store for her and these two unexpected little visitors. Night had fallen over the Anderson mansion. Jack and Henry, exhausted after a day of play, slept soundly in the guest room. Beth, however, was far from finding sleep. Sitting in her favorite armchair in the office, she stared at the little worn backpack now resting on her desk. The yellowed envelope, with her name written in a familiar hand, seemed to call to her. Beth took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the backpack. Part of her wanted to delay this moment, to maintain the bubble of happiness she'd experienced during the day, but she knew she couldn't run from the truth forever. With hesitant fingers, she removed the envelope. The paper was worn at the edges, as if handled many times. Beth traced the letters of her name, a knot forming in her throat. She recognized that handwriting. It belonged to Sarah. Sarah, her best childhood friend, the girl with whom she'd shared secrets, dreams, and tears for years, the friend who had disappeared from her life so long ago, leaving only questions and an unfilled void. With a trembling sigh, Beth opened the envelope and unfolded the letter. Dear Beth, if you are reading this, it means Jack and Henry have found you. I hope they are well and safe. I know you must be confused and shocked, and I apologize for throwing this at you in this way. But I had no choice. Beth, I am very ill. The doctors aren't giving me much time, and by the time you read this letter, I'm likely already in a coma or worse. I have no one else to turn to, no one I trust to care for my children. Our children, Beth, yes, you read that correctly. Jack and Henry are my children. And James's. Beth felt the air leave her lungs. James, her James. The man she had loved, with whom she'd planned a future. The man who left her without explanation 6 years ago. Tears blurred her vision, but Beth forced herself to keep reading. I know how much this must hurt. Believe me, I carry this guilt with me every day. It was never our intention to hurt you. It happened after your fight with James, when you two ended the engagement. I went to comfort him. One thing led to another. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake of one night. When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. James had gone abroad, and you were building your empire. I couldn't face either of you. So I ran, leaving everything behind. I raised the boys alone. Beth, James doesn't know about them. I never told him, and I ask that you don't tell him either. Not yet. They need stability now, not more chaos. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, not after what I did. But I beg you, Beth, please, take care of my children. They are all I have, all that matters. They are wonderful kids, full of love and life. They deserve a chance, a family. You have always been the strongest person I know, Beth. I know you can do this. And maybe, with time, you can find it in your heart to forgive me and James. With all my regret and gratitude, Sarah. Beth let the letter fall to the floor, her hands shaking uncontrollably. A sob escaped her lips, followed by another and another. Years of repressed emotions burst like a broken dam. Betrayal, pain, anger, confusion, all mixed together in a devastating swirl. James, the man she thought she knew so well, had slept with her best friend. Sarah, the person she trusted most, had betrayed her in the worst way possible. Beth stood up, staggering to the window. Outside, snow continued to fall softly, indifferent to the emotional chaos inside the mansion. How could her life have changed so drastically in just one day? Images of the twins playing in the snow flooded her mind, their smiles, their laughter, the innocent trust with which they had held her hands. Now she understood why they seemed so familiar. They were the perfect combination of James and Sarah. Another sob shook her body. Those adorable children, who had brought so much joy into her life in the past few hours, were the fruit of a betrayal that had destroyed her youthful dreams. Beth returned to her armchair, sinking into it. Her emotions swung between furious anger and deep sadness. How could Sarah have done this to her? How could James have betrayed her trust so easily? But then another question arose in her mind. How had Sarah managed to raise 2 children alone, knowing she was sick? The weight of the responsibility her old friend carried suddenly seemed overwhelming, and now that responsibility had been passed to her. Beth looked at the letter again, Sarah's words echoing in her mind. Please, take care of my children. Part of her wanted to refuse, to call social services in the morning and wash her hands of the whole situation. But then she remembered Jack and Henry's trusting blue eyes, the warmth of their small hands in hers, the pure joy on their faces as they built the snowman. Beth got up slowly, wiping her tears with the back of her hands. She walked to the room where the twins slept and opened the door quietly. There they were, 2 sleeping angels, unaware of the whirlwind of emotions their arrival had unleashed. Watching them, Beth felt something shift inside her. The pain of betrayal still burned in her chest. But alongside it, something new was growing. A fierce determination to protect these innocent children, to give them the love and stability they deserved. She didn't know how she would do it, or what the future held. But at that moment, looking at Jack and Henry, Beth made a silent promise. She would take care of them no matter what it cost. And maybe, along the way, she could begin to heal her own wounds. Gently closing the door, Beth returned to her bedroom. The night would be long, filled with tears and reflection. But when the sun rose, it would be the start of a new chapter in her life. A chapter she never could have predicted, but which now seemed inevitable. Beth spent the night awake, her thoughts a relentless storm of memories and emotions. Sitting on her bed, holding Sarah's crumpled letter in her hands, she allowed herself, for the first time in years, to dive into the past she had tried so desperately to forget. The first flashback hit her like lightning. It was summer. Beth and Sarah were 16. They lay on the Andersons' backyard lawn, watching the clouds and dreaming of the future. "One day I'm going to be a powerful businesswoman," Beth declared, pointing to a cloud shaped like a skyscraper. Sarah laughed, rolling over to look at her friend. "And I'll be a famous artist. The two of us conquering the world together." They intertwined their pinky fingers, making a silent promise of eternal friendship. Beth felt a tear slide down her cheek. How could that pure and true friendship end in betrayal? Another flashback appeared, high school prom night. Beth was nervous, adjusting her dress for the umpteenth time. "You look beautiful," Sarah whispered, helping her with the necklace. "James won't be able to take his eyes off you." Beth blushed, her heart racing at the thought of the boy who had caught her eye in recent months. "Thanks, Sarah. I don't know what I'd do without you." The two hugged, laughing and dreaming about the night ahead. The present day, Beth closed her eyes tightly, trying to push away the pain. Sarah had been more than a friend. She was like a sister, an essential part of her life. The next memory made her heart clench. Her first date with James. Beth was so nervous she could barely speak, but James, with his gentle smile and bright eyes, made her feel at ease instantly. "You know," he said, taking her hand over the table, "I think I'm falling in love with you, Beth Anderson." The world seemed to stop at that moment. Beth felt as if she were floating, lost in James's blue eyes. "I feel the same," she whispered back. Present-day Beth stifled a sob. The love she felt for James had been so real, so deep. How could he have thrown it away so easily? The memories kept flowing. The day James proposed to her. It was in the same garden where she and Sarah used to daydream. James had scattered rose petals along the path. Candles illuminated the twilight. When he knelt, presenting a ring that sparkled in the dusk, Beth felt as if her heart would explode with happiness. "Beth Anderson, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," she cried, throwing herself into his arms, 1,000 times, yes. That night, as they celebrated with friends and family, Beth thought her life couldn't get any better. Sarah was by her side, the two friends hugging and crying with joy. "I'm so happy for you, Beth," Sarah said, her eyes shining with tears. "You both deserve all the happiness in the world." The irony of those words now made Beth want to scream. But then, the happy memories gave way to painful ones. The fight. It was something so stupid, so insignificant. Beth wanted to postpone the wedding to focus on her rising career. James felt neglected, abandoned. "You love your work more than me," he shouted, his eyes full of hurt. "How can you say that?" Beth retorted, anger boiling in her veins. "I'm doing this for us, for our future." Harsh words were exchanged. The ring was thrown. Doors slammed. Beth ran to Sarah for comfort. Her friend held her, letting her cry on her shoulder. "It'll be all right," Sarah whispered, stroking her hair. "You'll get through this. Your love is too strong to end like this." But it wasn't all right. Days passed with no word from James. Beth buried herself in work, using it as a shield against the pain. And then the final blow. Beth decided to surprise James, willing to reconcile. She arrived at his apartment late at night, a bottle of wine in her hand and her heart full of hope. The door was ajar. She entered, calling his name softly. The muffled sound of voices guided her to the bedroom. Beth stopped, frozen, at the door. James and Sarah, entwined on the bed, clothes scattered on the floor, told a story Beth didn't want to believe. The world collapsed. The wine bottle shattered on the floor, making the lovers jump apart. "Beth!" Sarah screamed, pulling the sheet to cover herself. Her eyes were wide with horror. James jumped up, trying to reach her. "Beth, wait, it's not what you—" But Beth was already running, fleeing that scene, that betrayal, that nightmare. She ran until she couldn't anymore, until her lungs burned and her legs gave out. She fell to her knees in a deserted park, sobs shaking her body violently. That night, Beth swore she would never open her heart again, never trust, never love. Back in the present, Beth found herself panting, tears streaming down her face. The pain of that night, which she had buried so deeply, now felt fresh and raw. But something had changed. Jack and Henry's laughter echoed in her memory, mingling with the painful recollections. Those innocent children, the fruit of a betrayal that shattered her world, had brought unexpected light into her life. Beth stood up, staggering to the window. The sky was beginning to lighten, the first rays of sun painting the horizon pink and gold. A new day was dawning, bringing with it the promise of new beginnings. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was sure. For Jack and Henry, she would find the strength to face her past and perhaps learn to trust and love again. The morning sun filtered through Beth's bedroom curtains, finding her still awake, eyes red and swollen from a sleepless night. She rose mechanically, her body exhausted, but her mind still in turmoil. Passing by the mirror, Beth barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Where was the confident, unshakable businesswoman? In her place, she saw a fragile woman struggling to reconcile her painful past with the unexpected present. The sound of childish laughter pulled her from her grim thoughts. Jack and Henry were awake, their cheerful voices echoing through the mansion's corridors. Beth felt a contradictory wave of emotions, affection for the children who had brought life to her home, and a pang of resentment for the constant reminder they represented of past betrayal. Taking a deep breath, she headed to the kitchen. The children were already there, trying to reach a box of cereal on a high shelf. "Good morning, boys," Beth said, her voice rough. "Let me help you." While serving breakfast, Beth couldn't help but study the twins closely. Jack had Sarah's smile, the one that once lit up an entire room. Henry, on the other hand, furrowed his brow just like James when he was concentrating. Every gesture, every expression was a stab to Beth's heart, reminding her of her past. "I'm Miss Beth," Henry called, pulling her from her thoughts. "Can we play in the garden again today?" Beth hesitated. Part of her wanted to say no, to keep her distance, to protect herself from the pain these children caused her unintentionally. But another part, a part she thought long dead, yearned for their company, for the warmth and innocence they brought. "Of course," she finally answered, forcing a smile. "After breakfast?" As the children ate, Beth got lost in her thoughts again. What should she do now? Sarah's letter begged her to care for the children. But how could she do that? How could she look at Jack and Henry every day and not see the betrayal that had destroyed her life? Her thoughts were interrupted by the phone ringing. It was the local hospital. "Miss Anderson, we have a patient here, Sarah Mitchell. She's awake from her coma and asking for you and her children." Beth's world seemed to halt. Sarah was awake. The woman who was once her best friend, who had betrayed her so deeply, was asking to see her. "Ashen, I'll come as soon as I can," Beth stammered, hanging up. Looking at the children, now happily playing in the living room, Beth felt torn. The anger she nurtured for years fought against the compassion sprouting in her heart. Sarah was ill, possibly dying. Could she deny her one last meeting? "Jack, Henry," she called softly. "We need to talk." The children approached, their big, curious eyes fixed on her. "Your mum, she woke up. She's at the hospital and wants to see you." The boys' faces lit up with a mix of joy and anxiety. "Mummy's okay?" Jack asked, his voice trembling slightly. Beth felt her heart tighten. Despite everything, these children loved their mother. They weren't to blame for Sarah and James's actions. "She's better," Beth answered carefully. "We'll visit her, okay?" Helping the children get dressed, Beth fought an internal battle. Every fiber of her being screamed to keep her distance, to protect herself from more pain. But looking at Jack and Henry, she knew she couldn't deny them this. They deserved to see their mother. And Sarah, well, Sarah deserved a chance to explain herself. In the car, on the way to the hospital, Beth found herself reliving memories of her friendship with Sarah, the happy moments, the laughter, the dreams they once shared. How had it all gone so wrong? Arriving at St. Mary's Hospital, Beth felt her stomach turn. The children, eager to see their mother, could barely contain their excitement. She guided them through the white, sterile corridors, her heart beating faster with each step. Stopping outside Sarah's room, Beth hesitated. Was she really ready for this? Could she face the woman who had betrayed her so deeply? Jack gently tugged her hand. "It's okay, Miss Beth. Mom will be happy to see you too." The innocence of those words hit Beth like lightning. These children, in their purity, didn't see the complicated past, the betrayal, the pain. They only saw love and possibilities. With a deep sigh, Beth opened the door. The moment of truth had arrived. She would face Sarah, not only for herself but for the children who, against all odds, had found a place in her heart. As she entered the room, Beth knew her life was about to change once again, but this time she would face whatever came not with bitterness, but with renewed determination. For Jack, for Henry, and maybe for herself. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The conflict in her heart would not be easily resolved. However, taking this step, facing Sarah and the past, was the start of a healing journey Beth didn't even know she needed. St. Mary's Hospital stood imposingly against the grey winter sky, its windows reflecting the faint morning light. Beth parked her car in the nearly empty lot, her hands trembling slightly as she turned off the engine. Jack and Henry, in the back seat, could hardly contain their excitement. "Are we going to see Mommy now?" Jack asked, his eyes shining with anticipation. Beth took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. "Yes, dear. But first, we need to speak with the doctors, okay?" She helped the children out of the car, holding their small hands in hers. The contrast between their eagerness and her own emotional turmoil was striking. While they hopped alongside her, Beth felt as if she were walking to her own execution. At the reception, Beth introduced herself, her voice betraying a slight tremor. "I'm here to see Sarah Mitchell. I was a close friend." The receptionist typed something into her computer, her eyes widening slightly at the information. "Ah, yes, Dr. Patel would like to speak with you first. Please wait in room 302. Beth nodded, guiding the twins through the hospital's sterilized corridors. The smell of antiseptic and the sight of patients on gurneys made her stomach churn. Or was it the prospect of finally facing Sarah after all these years? In the waiting room, Beth knelt in front of the children, her eyes level with theirs. "Jack, Henry, I need you to be very brave now, okay? I'm going to talk to Mommy's doctor, and then we'll see if we can visit her." "But Mommy is okay, right?" Henry asked, his small voice worried. Beth felt her heart ache. How to explain the complexity of the situation to 6-year-olds? "Your mum is very sick, dear, but the doctors are doing their best to help her." Before the children could ask more questions, Dr. Patel entered the room. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a tired smile. "Miss Anderson, can we speak privately?" Beth hesitated, looking at the twins. The receptionist, noticing the situation, offered to stay with the children for a few minutes. In Dr. Patel's office, Beth sat down, her body tense as a violin string. "How is she, doctor?" The doctor sighed, folding her hands on the desk. "Sarah is stable at the moment, but her condition is grave. The cancer is in an advanced stage. She doesn't have much time." Beth felt as if the air had been sucked out of her lungs. Despite all the anger and hurt she felt, the thought of Sarah, once so full of life, wasting away in a hospital bed was devastating. "How long?" she managed to ask. "Weeks, maybe a month or two at most," Dr. Patel answered gently. "She's been asking for you and the children. I think it would be good for her to see them." Beth nodded mechanically, her mind a whirl of conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to flee, to protect herself from the pain that would surely come. But another part, the part that still remembered the friendship they once shared, knew she couldn't deny this last request. "May I see her now?" Beth asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dr. Patel nodded. "Yes, but be prepared. The illness has affected her greatly. And, Miss Anderson, be kind. Whatever your history, now is not the time for settling scores." The doctor's words hit Beth like a slap. She had been so focused on her own pain that she almost forgot Sarah's suffering. With a nod, she stood, her legs trembling slightly. Back in the waiting room, Jack and Henry ran to her, their little faces anxious for answers. "Can we see Mommy now?" Jack asked, tugging at Beth's sleeve. Beth knelt again, looking into the children's eyes. "Yes, we can, but remember, Mommy is very sick. She may look different from what you remember, okay? But she's still the same Mommy who loves you very much." The boys nodded solemnly, their expressions a mixture of fear and hope. Beth felt a wave of protectiveness wash over her. Regardless of her feelings for Sarah, she would do everything possible to make this moment as gentle as possible for the children. Walking down the corridor to Sarah's room, Beth felt as if she were moving in slow motion. Each step took her closer to a confrontation she had avoided for years. What would she say? How would she react upon seeing Sarah again? Stopping in front of the door, Beth closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. She thought of all the nights spent crying, the anger she had nurtured for so long, the pain of betrayal. But she also thought of the friendship they once shared, the dreams and laughter. "Miss Beth," Henry's voice brought her back to the present. "Is everything okay?" Beth looked at the twins, their innocent eyes filled with concern. At that moment, she made her decision. For these children, for Sarah, and maybe even for herself, she would face this moment with grace and compassion. "Everything is fine, dear," she replied, forcing a smile. "Let's go see your mum." With one last deep breath, Beth opened the door. The moment of truth had arrived. Whatever the outcome, she knew her life would never be the same. As she entered the room, the twins clinging to her hands, Beth prepared to face not only Sarah but also her own past, her wounds, and perhaps a future she had never imagined for herself. The hospital room was a study in white and grey, silence broken only by the rhythmic beeping of monitors. Beth paused at the entrance, her heart pounding. There in the bed lay Sarah. The initial shock was overwhelming. The woman before her barely resembled the Sarah Beth remembered. The once vibrant face was pale and gaunt, her hair, once long and shiny, now thin and lifeless. Tubes and wires snaked around her frail body, as if they were keeping Sarah anchored to this world by sheer force of will. Jack and Henry, still holding Beth's hands, were momentarily paralyzed. It was Henry who first broke the silence, his voice a trembling whisper. "Mommy?" The sound seemed to echo in the silent room. Beth, swallowing hard, gently guided the children closer to the bed. "Yes, that's your mommy," she said softly. "Remember what we talked about. She's very sick, but she still loves you very much." The children approached hesitantly, their wide eyes fixed on Sarah's motionless face. Jack reached out a trembling hand, lightly touching his mother's arm. "Mommy, wake up," he called, voice choked. "We're here to see you." Beth's heart broke at the hope in the boy's eyes. She knew Sarah wouldn't respond. Not now. Dr. Patel had explained that although Sarah had awakened briefly, she had slipped back into a comatose state. "Children," Beth began softly, "your mom is sleeping now. She needs to rest to get better. But I'm sure she can hear you. How about telling her about the snowman we made?" Encouraged by Beth, Jack and Henry began speaking softly to Sarah, telling her about their adventures at the mansion. Beth stepped back a bit, giving them a moment of privacy, while fighting the storm of emotions in her own chest. Looking at Sarah, Beth felt a confused mix of anger and pity. The anger, an old companion for so many years, still burned. How could Sarah have betrayed her like that? How could she have kept the children hidden for so long? But seeing her old friend in such a fragile state, pity began to seep in. No one deserved to suffer like this, not even someone who had hurt her so deeply. A soft sob pulled her out of her thoughts. Henry had begun crying silently, and Jack was hugging him, his own eyes shining with restrained tears. "She's going to wake up, right, Miss Beth?" Jack asked, his voice trembling. Beth felt a lump in her throat. How to explain the gravity of the situation to such young children? How to balance honesty with compassion? "I don't know, sweetheart," she finally replied, kneeling beside them. "The doctors are doing the best they can, but what I do know is that your mom loves you very much, and she would be so happy to know you're here." The children snuggled up to her, seeking comfort. Beth hugged them, surprised by the intensity of the protective feeling washing over her. At that moment, looking at Sarah in the bed and feeling the warmth of the boys in her arms, Beth made a decision that would change the course of her life. "Jack, Henry," she said gently, "how would you feel about staying with me for a while, until your mum gets better?" The twins looked at her, their young faces showing a mix of relief and worry. "So how can we come see Mommy every day?" Henry asked. "Of course," Beth assured him. "We'll come as often as we can." Jack nodded slowly. "Okay. I think Mommy would like that." Beth felt a pang in her heart. These boys, so young and already facing such a difficult situation, displayed a strength she couldn't help but admire. At that moment, a nurse entered the room. "I'm sorry, but visiting hours are over." Beth nodded, standing up. "Boys, say goodbye to your mum. We'll be back tomorrow." Jack and Henry approached the bed, each giving Sarah a gentle kiss on the cheek. "Bye, Mommy, we love you," they said in unison. As the children headed to the door, Beth hesitated. Slowly, she approached Sarah's bed. Looking at her old friend's pale face, Beth felt years of hurt and anger mixing with unexpected compassion. "Oh, Sarah," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "how did we get here?" For a brief moment, Beth thought she saw a tremor in Sarah's eyelids, but it must have been her imagination. With a deep sigh, she turned and left the room, joining the boys in the hallway. As they walked back to the car, Beth felt as if she were carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Deciding to care for the children hadn't been easy, but looking at Jack and Henry, she knew it was the right thing to do. On the drive back to the mansion, Beth reflected on how drastically her life had changed in just a few days. From a solitary executive focused solely on her career, she now found herself responsible for 2 young children, facing a painful past and an uncertain future. Glancing in the rearview mirror, she saw Jack and Henry dozing in the back seat, exhausted by the emotional strain of the day. A gentle smile touched her lips. Maybe, Beth thought, this was the second chance she hadn't known she needed. A chance to heal old wounds, to rediscover the meaning of family, and perhaps find a new purpose in life. With that resolve in mind, Beth drove back home, ready to face the challenges to come. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, she felt hopeful. The days following the hospital visit were an emotional roller coaster for Beth. The once silent and cold mansion was now filled with life, laughter, and occasionally tears. Jack and Henry brought with them an energy Beth hadn't experienced in years, and she found herself navigating the unfamiliar waters of improvised motherhood. One sunny morning, Beth woke to the sound of laughter coming from the garden. Still in her pajamas, she approached the window and saw the twins running across the lawn, chasing each other in a makeshift game. The smile that formed on her lips was involuntary, a pure reaction to their innocent joy. "Jack, Henry," she called, opening the window. "Breakfast is almost ready." The boys stopped their play, enthusiastically waving at her before running back into the house. Beth felt a wave of affection that surprised her with its intensity. In just 1 week, these children had worked their way into her heart in a way she could never have imagined. In the kitchen, Beth moved with a newly acquired ease, making pancakes and cutting fruit. She had never been very skilled in the kitchen, preferring prepared meals or fancy restaurants. But now, seeing the boys' eyes light up at the sight of Mickey Mouse-shaped pancakes, she felt a satisfaction no million-dollar contract had ever given her. "Miss Beth," Jack said with his mouth full of pancake, "can we visit Mommy today?" The question, though expected, still made Beth's heart tighten. Hospital visits were a bittersweet mix of hope and pain. Sarah remained in a coma, her condition practically unchanged. Each visit was a painful reminder of the past and the uncertainty of the future. "Of course, sweetheart," Beth replied, forcing a smile. "We'll go after lunch." While the boys finished their breakfast, Beth allowed herself a moment of reflection, The routine they had established was surprisingly normal. Breakfast to school. She had enrolled the twins in a nearby private school. Playtime, hospital visits, dinner, bedtime stories. It was a life Beth had never imagined for herself. But now it felt strangely right. However, there were moments when the reality of the situation hit her with full force. Moments when she looked at Jack and saw James's smile, or when Henry made a gesture so characteristic of Sarah that Beth felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. In those moments, doubts consumed her. Was she doing the right thing by caring for these children? Should she contact James? Didn't he have the right to know about his children? But then, anger resurfaced. James had betrayed her. He and Sarah had destroyed her dreams, her trust. What right did he have now? Miss Beth. Henry's voice brought her back to the present. Is everything okay? Beth blinked, realizing she had been standing still, staring at nothing. The breakfast dishes forgotten in the sink. Yes, dear, I was just thinking, how about we go to the park before visiting your mum? The children agreed eagerly, running off to get ready. Beth watched them, a sad smile playing on her lips. Despite everything, she couldn't deny she was growing attached to them. Jack, with his endless curiosity and protective way with his brother. Henry, quieter and more observant, always ready with a hug at the most unexpected moments. At the park, Beth found herself genuinely laughing for the first time in years as she pushed the boys on the swings. Their laughter was contagious, and for a moment, she allowed herself to forget all the complications and pains of the past. Right then, it was just her and the children living in the present. "Hiya, Miss Beth," Jack shouted, his face a mask of pure joy. Beth obliged, pushing him harder, feeling a wave of protection and affection. It was frightening how quickly these feelings had grown. She knew she should keep her guard up, maintain emotional distance. After all, wasn't this situation temporary? But her heart seemed to have other ideas. Back at the mansion, getting ready for the hospital visit, Beth found herself looking at the phone. James's number, which she had never had the courage to delete, seemed to burn in her mind. It would be so easy to call, to tell him about the children, to share this burden. "We're ready." Jack's excited voice interrupted her thoughts. He and Henry stood at the door, dressed and eager to see their mum. Beth smiled, stepping away from the phone. No, she decided. Not yet. The children needed stability now, not more chaos. James would have to wait. At the hospital, the scene was the same as always. Sarah, motionless in bed, the monitors beeping constantly. The boys approached, telling her about their day at the park, about the morning pancakes, about how much they missed her. Beth watched from a distance, her heart divided. Seeing the children's unconditional love for their mother was both touching and painful. She wondered if she would ever be able to forgive Sarah completely. As the boys talked to Sarah, Beth noticed something different. A solitary, silent tear rolled down Sarah's face. It was so quick that Beth almost thought she'd imagined it. "Dr. Patel," she called to the doctor passing by. I think I saw Sarah cry. Is that possible?" The doctor approached, examining Sarah carefully. "It's possible. Comatose patients sometimes have involuntary reactions. It might be a good sign, but we can't be sure." That small tear sparked a glimmer of hope in Beth. Maybe, just maybe, Sarah could recover. And if she woke up, what then? Back at the mansion, after a lively dinner where the boys recounted their entire hospital visit, Beth found herself in the living room. The children snuggled against her on the couch while watching a cartoon movie. "Miss Beth," Henry said sleepily, his head resting on her shoulder, "do you think Mommy will wake up soon?" Beth felt her heart tighten. "I don't know, sweetheart, but the doctors are doing the best they can." "What if she doesn't wake up?" Jack asked, his voice small and scared. Beth swallowed hard, fighting back tears. Then we'll deal with it together. You're not alone, okay?" The boys nodded, snuggling closer to her. Beth hugged them tightly, feeling the weight of the responsibility she had taken on. These children trusted her, depended on her, and God help her, she was falling in love with them. Later, after putting the twins to bed, Beth found herself again in front of the phone. Her hand hovered over the device, the internal debate fiercer than ever. Did James deserve to know? Didn't the children have the right to know their father? With a frustrated sigh, she stepped away. Not today, she decided. Not while Sarah still lay in that hospital bed. Not while the children were still adjusting to all this change. Lying in her bed that night, Beth reflected on how drastically her life had changed in such a short time. The cold, calculating executive had given way to a woman now concerned with school schedules, park visits, and bedtime stories. It was scary, confusing, and completely unexpected. But as she closed her eyes, Beth realized that, for the first time in years, she no longer felt alone. The emptiness that had long inhabited her heart was being filled, slowly but surely, by the love of two children who had blown into her life like a hurricane. The future was uncertain. Sarah might wake up. James might come into the picture. But at that moment, that night, Beth allowed herself to dream of the possibility of a family she never knew she wanted, but now couldn't imagine living without. It was a rainy Sunday afternoon, and Beth was enjoying a rare moment of peace while the twins took a nap. Determined to organize the children's belongings, she headed to the room they now occupied, her footsteps silent along the mansion's corridor. In the room, Beth smiled at the sight of Jack and Henry asleep, their faces serene in contrast to the energy they usually displayed. Carefully, she began putting away scattered clothes when her eyes fell on the old backpack the children had brought with them. With a hesitant sigh, Beth picked up the backpack. She knew she shouldn't snoop, but curiosity and the need to understand more about the situation won out over her initial reluctance. Sitting on the edge of the bed, Beth slowly unzipped the bag. Besides the few clothes and toys, something at the bottom caught her attention. It was a yellowed envelope, different from the one containing Sarah's letter. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside, she found a series of photographs. Her heart stopped for a moment as she recognized the face in one of them. James. Younger, smiling that smile that once made her heart melt, but unmistakably James. The photo showed him on a beach, his arms around a pregnant Sarah. Both looked happy, carefree, unaware of the storm their actions would unleash in Beth's life. As she looked at the image, Beth felt a wave of memories flood over her. Flashback. It was spring, and the park was in full bloom. Beth strolled hand in hand with James, their hearts light and full of promise. "You know," James said, stopping under a flowering cherry tree, "one day we'll bring our children here." Beth laughed, her face flushed with happiness. "Hi to children, are you already planning our family?" James pulled her close, his eyes shining with love. "With you, Beth, I plan our entire future." End of flashback. Beth swallowed hard, pushing the memory away. That future never materialized, at least not with her. Continuing to go through the envelope, she found more photos. James holding newborn twins, him teaching the boys to walk. Moments of a family life Beth never knew. A folded piece of paper fell out from between the photos. Beth picked it up, unfolding it carefully. It was a letter, James's unmistakable handwriting. "Dear Sarah, I know we agreed it would be best for me to stay away, but I can't stop thinking about the boys. How are they? Does Jack still have that habit of sleeping with his teddy bear upside down? Has Henry overcome his fear of thunder? I understand your reasons for keeping our situation a secret, but sometimes I wonder if we made the right choice. They deserve to know who their father is, don't they? Always yours, James." Beth felt as if the floor had been torn from under her feet. James knew. He had always known about the children. The revelation hit her like a speeding train, bringing with it a new wave of betrayal and hurt. Flashback. "James, please, can we talk about this?" Beth pleaded, tears streaming down her face. James turned, his eyes cold and distant. "There's nothing to talk about, Beth. It's over." "But why? What did I do wrong?" He hesitated for a moment, a shadow of emotion crossing his face before quickly vanishing. "Sometimes things just don't work out. It's better this way." And with that, he left her life, leaving Beth broken and confused. End of flashback. Now, years later, the puzzle pieces began to fit. James hadn't simply ended it. He had chosen Sarah and the children on the way. Beth felt a toxic mix of anger, sadness, and confusion bubbling inside her. Why had James agreed to stay away? Why had Sarah insisted on this secret? And what did it mean for Jack and Henry? A soft movement drew her attention. Henry was stirring, his sleepy eyes blinking. "Miss Beth?" he murmured, sitting up in bed. "What's that?" Beth quickly put the photos and letter back into the envelope, her heart racing. "Nothing, dear. I was just tidying up a bit." Henry looked at her curiously, his eyes, so much like James's, filled with a wisdom beyond his years. "Is it about our dad?" The question caught Beth off guard. She knew this moment would come eventually, but not so soon or so directly. "Why do you ask that, Henry?" The boy shrugged, fiddling with the hem of his shirt. "Jack and we wonder about him sometimes. Mom never talked much, but we knew we had a dad somewhere." Beth felt her heart tighten. These children, so young and already carrying so many questions, so many uncertainties. "Henry," she began softly, sitting beside him on the bed, "what would you like to know about your dad?" The boy's eyes lit up with a mix of hope and apprehension. Does he love us? Why isn't he here with us?" At that moment, Jack also woke up, quickly joining the conversation. "Do you know our dad, Miss Beth?" Beth felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. How to explain the complexity of the situation to 6-year-olds? How to protect them from the truth without lying? "Yes, I know your father," she admitted finally. "And I'm sure he loves you very much." "Then why doesn't he ever visit us?" Jack asked, his voice a mixture of curiosity and hurt. Beth took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes adults make complicated decisions, thinking they're doing what's best for everyone. "Your dad, he thought staying away was the best option at the time." The children absorbed her words in silence, their little faces serious and thoughtful. "But what if he wants to meet us now?" Henry asked quietly. The question hung in the air, loaded with possibilities and consequences. Beth felt her heart split. On the one hand, these children deserved to know their father. On the other, the idea of James entering their lives now, after everything that happened, filled her with fear and resentment. "If that happens," Beth said finally, "we'll face it together, okay? You're not alone in this." The twins nodded, seeming a bit lighter. Beth hugged them, feeling the warmth of their small bodies against hers, a wave of protection enveloping her. Later that night, after putting the children to sleep, Beth found herself again in front of the phone. Her fingers hovered over the buttons, her internal debate more intense than ever. James deserved to know that his children were asking about him. Didn't the children have the right to meet their father? But what about her, Beth asked herself. Was she ready to face James again, to reopen old wounds and possibly create new ones? With a frustrated sigh, she drew her hand back. Not today, she decided. Not while everything was still so uncertain. Not while Sarah lay in a hospital bed. Looking out the window at the rainy night, Beth allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. Silent tears ran down her face. Tears for a lost past, a complicated present, and an uncertain future. But amid the sadness, there was a spark of something else. Hope, perhaps. Or the realization that, no matter what the future held, she was no longer alone. Jack and Henry had become her safe harbor, her reason to move forward. And as the rain continued to fall outside, Beth made a silent promise. No matter what happened, she would protect these children. And maybe, just maybe, in the process of caring for them, she could begin to heal her own wounds. Beth's office, once a sanctuary of work and ambition, had turned into an internal battleground. Sitting in her leather chair, she stared at the phone as if it were a bomb about to explode. James's number, so many times almost dialed and so many times avoided, seemed to pulsate on the phone screen. Beth closed her eyes, allowing herself to imagine what that conversation might be like. "James, it's Beth. Beth, I wasn't expecting your call. There's something you need to know about Jack and Henry." "Jack and... wait, how do you..." She shook her head, dismissing the imaginary dialogue. Would it really be so simple, so direct? Years of hurt, Betrayal and secrets couldn't be undone with a few sentences over the phone. Beth stood up, walking to the window. Outside, Jack and Henry were playing in the garden, their laughter echoing across the property. Watching them brought forth another imaginary conversation, this time more heated. "How could you, James? How could you hide your own children?" I thought it was best," Sarah said. "Best for whom?" "Certainly not for the children who grew up without a father." She pressed her forehead against the cold glass, her reflection showing tired, worried eyes. The last few months had been an emotional roller coaster. Caring for Jack and Henry, visiting Sarah at the hospital, dealing with her own conflicted feelings, it left her exhausted, but also more alive than she'd been in years. A cheerful shout brought her back to the present. Henry had managed to climb a low tree, and Jack applauded enthusiastically. Beth couldn't help smiling. These children, who entered her life so unexpectedly, had become her world. And it was for them that she needed to make this decision. They deserved to know the truth, deserved a chance to meet their father. But what if James rejected them? What if he wanted to take them away? Fear tightened Beth's chest. Returning to her desk, she picked up paper and pen, determined to list the pros and cons of contacting James. Pros: the children would know their father. James would assume financial responsibility. Possible additional support raising the twins. Closure for everyone involved. Cons: disrupting the children's current routine. Possible rejection by James' legal complications. Reopening old emotional wounds. Beth looked at the list, feeling even more confused. Each point seemed equally heavy, each decision fraught with potential consequences. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, quickly hiding the list. Jack and Henry entered, their faces flushed from playing outside. "Miss Beth," Jack began, a bit hesitant, "can we show you something?" "Of course, dears," Beth replied, forcing a smile and setting aside her dilemmas for the moment. The twins approached, each holding a piece of paper. "We made drawings," Henry explained, his voice shy but proud. Beth took the drawings, her heart tightening as she saw what they had created. They were portraits of what could only be described as their ideal family. In Jack's drawing, there were 5 stick figures, 2 children holding hands, clearly him and Henry, a larger woman, Sarah, Beth assumed, a tall man with a big smile, James, and another female figure slightly off to the side but still part of the group. Beth was touched to realize that was probably her. Henry's drawing was similar, but with a crucial difference. The figure representing Beth was holding hands with the children, forming a circle along with Sarah and James. "It's our family," Henry explained softly. "All together." Beth felt tears forming in her eyes. The innocence and simple desire of these children for a united family hit her deeply. "They're beautiful boys," she managed to say, her voice choked with emotion. "You did a wonderful job." The children smiled, clearly pleased with her reaction. "Miss Beth," Jack asked, his voice full of hope, "do you think one day we can be like that, a real family?" The question hung in the air, laden with childlike expectations and dreams. Beth looked into their hopeful faces, feeling the weight of her decision more than ever. I don't know, dears," she answered honestly. "But I promise I'll do my best to make sure you're happy and feel loved. Okay?" The children nodded, seemingly satisfied with her response. After a few more minutes of conversation, they left the office, leaving Beth alone with her thoughts and their drawings, which now seemed to shout for a resolution. Looking at the idealized family portraits again, Beth felt something change inside her. These children deserved a chance at the family they dreamed of, even if reality might be different from what they imagined. With a deep sigh, she picked up the phone. Her hands trembled slightly as she dialed the number she knew by heart, but had never dared to use. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. "Hello?" James's familiar voice sounded on the other end, sending a wave of contradictory emotions through Beth. For a moment she was silent, almost hanging up. But then the image of the children's drawings flashed in her mind, giving her the courage she needed. "James? It's Beth. Beth Anderson." A heavy pause on the other end. "Beth, I wasn't expecting." "James, we need to talk." Beth interrupted, her voice firm despite the turmoil in her chest. It's about Jack and Henry. Your children." The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Finally, James spoke, his voice a mixture of shock and resignation. "Where can we meet?" Beth closed her eyes, feeling the weight of years of secrets and hurts beginning to lift. "Tomorrow, at the cafe near Central Park, 10 a.m. "I'll be there," James replied simply. After hanging up, Beth sat for a long time, absorbing the magnitude of what she had just done. There was no turning back now. For better or worse, everyone's lives were about to change drastically. Standing up, she walked to the window again. Jack and Henry had returned to the garden, now building what looked like a fort out of sticks and leaves. Watching them, Beth felt a mix of fear and determination. She didn't know what the future held, how James would react, or how the children would cope with it all. But one thing was certain. She would do everything in her power to protect those boys and ensure they had the love and support they deserved. With one last look at the twins playing carefree, Beth stepped away from the window. Tomorrow would be a crucial day, a turning point in their lives, and she would be ready to face it, not just for herself, but for the two little souls who had stolen her heart and given her a new purpose. As night fell over the mansion, bringing with it the promise of a new dawn and an uncertain future full of possibilities, Beth prepared for sleep. The children's drawings were carefully placed on her bedside table, a constant reminder of what truly mattered. Tomorrow, the past and present would collide, and a new chapter in their lives would begin. The hospital corridor seemed endless as Beth walked towards Sarah's room. Her heart pounded, a mix of anxiety and resolve coursing through her veins. She had decided to visit Sarah one last time before her meeting with James, seeking what? Answers? Forgiveness? Even she wasn't certain. Entering the room, Beth was greeted by the familiar beeping of the machines and the sterile smell of the hospital. Sarah lay in the bed, seemingly as still as ever. Yet something felt different today. Beth couldn't quite define what, but there was an energy in the air, an almost palpable tension. Approaching the bed, Beth observed Sarah's pale face. The lines of worry and pain that had marked Sarah's features in recent weeks seemed less pronounced today. "Sarah," Beth began, her voice low and hesitant, I came to say goodbye. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with James and telling him about the children. I know it's not what you wanted, but they deserve to know the truth," and Beth stopped abruptly. Had she imagined it? Or had Sarah's fingers moved? Leaning in closer, she watched carefully. There it was again. A slight tremor in Sarah's eyelids. "Sarah?" Beth called, her voice now louder, a mixture of hope and fear. "Sarah, can you hear me?" Sarah's eyes began to move more intensely, her fingers twitching slightly. Beth's heart raced. Was it really happening? After weeks of silence and immobility, Sarah was waking up. "Nurse!" Beth shouted, not taking her eyes off Sarah. "Someone, please, she's waking up." The next few minutes were a whirlwind of activity. Doctors and nurses flooded the room, checking vital signs and speaking in medical terms Beth barely understood. Amid the chaos, Sarah's eyes finally opened, blinking in confusion at the light. "Be Beth!" Sarah's voice was hoarse, barely audible, but to Beth, it was like thunder in a clear sky. Tears that Beth hadn't realized she was holding back began to fall freely. "Yes, Sarah, it's me. You're in the hospital. You've been in a coma for weeks." The doctors asked Beth to leave so they could examine Sarah properly. The minutes that followed were the longest of Beth's life. She paced back and forth in the corridor, her mind a jumble of conflicting emotions. Finally, the doctor stepped out of the room. "She's stable and lucid," he informed. "You can see her now, but only for a few minutes. She's still very weak." Beth entered the room again, her heart hammering in her chest. Sarah was sitting up in bed, supported by pillows. Her eyes, though tired, were alert and fixed on Beth. "The children?" was Sarah's first question, her voice still weak. "They're fine," Beth replied, moving closer to the bed. "They're with me. They're safe." The relief on Sarah's face was palpable. "Thank you, Beth. I'm sorry. For everything." The words hung in the air between them, charged with years of secrets and hurt. Beth felt a wave of conflicting emotions, anger, relief, confusion. "Why, Sarah?" she finally asked, her voice trembling. "Why hide the children? Why not tell me? Why not tell James?" Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength. When she opened them again, they were filled with tears. "James doesn't know," she whispered. "He never knew about the children." Beth felt as though the ground had been pulled from under her. "What, but the photos, the letter?" Sarah shook her head weakly. "All staged. So I was afraid, Beth. Afraid of losing the children, afraid of facing what I'd done. So I made up a story, created false evidence, to protect the boys, to protect myself." The revelation hit Beth like a speeding train. All her assumptions, all the conclusions she had drawn, everything was wrong. "But why?" Beth asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Because I knew that if James found out, he would want to do the right thing. He would want to marry me, raise the children. And I couldn't do that to him. I couldn't ruin his life for a one-night mistake." Beth stumbled to the chair beside the bed, feeling dizzy with all the revelations. James didn't know, he never knew. All the accusations, all the anger she had directed at him over the years, they were unfounded. "Beth," Sarah continued, her voice weak but urgent, "I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but please, don't tell James. Not yet. The children, they need stability now." Beth looked at Sarah, a turmoil of emotions in her chest, anger at the ongoing deceit, compassion for the fragile woman before her, confusion about what to do next. Standing abruptly, Beth moved away from the bed. I need time to process all this," she said, her voice trembling. "I need to think about what's best for Jack and Henry." Leaving the room, Beth felt as if the world was spinning around her. The meeting with James, scheduled for the next day, now seemed even more complicated. What should she do? Tell the truth? Keep Sarah's secret? Walking down the hospital corridor, Beth knew she was facing the hardest decision of her life. A decision that would affect not only her, but James and Sarah, and most importantly, the two innocent children who had become the center of her world. The small cafe in the town of Millbrook seemed frozen in time, with its worn wooden tables and the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Beth entered, her heart pounding so hard she feared everyone could hear it. Her eyes swept the place until they found the familiar figure sitting in a distant corner. James. He hadn't changed much over the years. A few grey hairs at the temples, a few more lines around his eyes, but he was still the man who once was the center of her world. Their eyes met, and Beth felt the weight of years of pain and secrets between them. "Beth," James said softly as she approached, "it's good to see you." Beth sat down, her hands trembling slightly. "James, thank you for coming. Dicey, there's something you need to know." In the next few minutes, Beth poured out the entire story, the twins showing up at her door, Sarah's letter, the weeks taking care of the children, and finally, the truth about their paternity. James remained silent for a long moment, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. I have children," he finally whispered, his voice choked. Beth nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "Jack and Henry, they're 6, and they're wonderful, James." "Why didn't Sarah ever tell me?" James asked, pain clear in his voice. Beth hesitated, remembering her conversation with Sarah at the hospital. She was afraid. Afraid of ruining your life, of losing the children. James ran a hand over his face, obviously struggling to process everything. "I need to see them, Beth. I need to meet my children." The drive back to the mansion was silent, filled with unspoken emotions and unanswered questions. When they arrived, Beth saw the twins playing in the garden, unaware of the monumental change about to occur in their lives. "Jack, Henry," Beth called softly. "There's someone here who wants to meet you." The children turned, curiosity on their faces. James stepped forward, his expression a mix of fear and wonder. "Hello?" he said, kneeling to their eye level. I'm your dad." There was a moment of stunned silence before Henry, always the bold one, took a step forward. "You're really our dad?" he asked, eyes wide. James nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Yes, I am, and I'm so happy to finally meet you." What followed was a scene Beth would never forget. Jack and Henry, after a moment's hesitation, threw themselves into James's arms. Laughter and tears mixed as father and sons embraced for the first time. The sound of a car approaching broke the moment. Beth turned to see a taxi pulling up, and to her surprise, Sarah stepped out, leaning on a cane. "Sarah!" Beth exclaimed, rushing to help her. "What are you doing here?" "You should be in the hospital." Sarah smiled faintly. "I couldn't miss this. I needed to be here to face the consequences of my actions." When Sarah approached the group, the air grew tense. James stood up, his face a mixture of conflicting emotions. The children, sensing the tension, went quiet. "James," Sarah began, her voice trembling, "I'm so sorry. For everything, Before she could continue, James stepped forward and hugged her. "It's all right," he murmured. "We're all here now. That's what matters." Beth watched the scene, feeling a wave of emotions crash over her. Anger, hurt, forgiveness, hope, all mixed in her chest. And then, to her surprise, she felt herself being pulled into the group hug by the twins. "Miss Beth," Jack said, smiling, "now we're a real family." The child's words broke down the last barrier. Beth felt years of resentment dissipate, replaced by a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. 1 year later, the Anderson mansion was unrecognizable. Twinkling lights adorned every window, and the sound of laughter and Christmas music echoed through the halls. In the grand salon, an imposing tree dominated the space, surrounded by colorful presents. Beth observed the scene from the doorway, a gentle smile on her lips. James and Sarah were sitting on the sofa, their heads together as they talked quietly. The twins ran around, proudly wearing matching Christmas sweaters. The past year had been a journey of healing and reconciliation. It hadn't been easy. There were heated arguments, tears shed, and moments of doubt. But there were also laughs, hugs, and the slow, steady construction of a new family. Sarah, now recovered, had moved into a nearby house. She and James were working on their relationship, rebuilding trust step by step. Beth, to her own surprise, had become an integral part of this new family dynamic. Loved by the twins as a second mother, and respected by James and Sarah as the woman who had held everything together in the most difficult moments. "Aunt Beth," Henry called, running over with a present in his hands. "This is for you." Beth knelt down, accepting the package with an emotional smile. "Thank you, dear." As she opened the gift, a framed drawing of the family made by the twins, Beth reflected on how a simple act of kindness, opening the door to 2 lost children on a Christmas morning, had changed the course of so many lives. Looking around at the smiling faces of her newly formed family, Beth felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. The path had been long and often painful, but here they were, united, loved, and finally at peace. As everyone gathered around the tree to exchange gifts, Beth offered a silent prayer of thanks, for second chances, for forgiveness, and above all, for the transformative power of love. On that Christmas night, as laughter filled the once lonely mansion, Beth knew she had found the true meaning of family and home. And as the snow fell softly outside, Beth embraced her new reality, a life filled with love, hope, and the warmth of a family that, against all odds, had found its way back to each other.